Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Your Brain on Air. I am your host, Ollie Vogt Larson, and Trump is screaming at people like Bill Cassidy behind the scenes. Who knew everything was not going well for the Trump administration? I had the impression this whole time things were going great. They had no issues. There were very few controversies. Who knew everything was not going well behind the scenes? I believe that they were sincerely having this wonderful time, not being skirmished by anything. But they just keep up a great veneer of civility. What can I say? Obla di, obla da. Life goes on, bro. I've learned me two things in my life from music that raised me as a kid. It's that and that aluminum foil is my favorite wrapping thing for food, and homemade Faraday bags. Folks, you got to be a joker because you got to do what you please. One thing I can tell you is you've got to be free. Come together right now over me. Let's begin this Thursday broadcast with a little bit of this.
Turmoil today, canceling plans to sign a bill aimed at cheaper housing and turning his closed-door luncheon with Republican senators into a shouting match over the war in Iran.
Yikes.
The president wants senators to pass a different bill, one changing the rules around voting, before he takes action on anything else, he says. But that one doesn't have the votes, according to senators, and that was before today's hot lunch. CBS News congressional correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns.
Hot lunch as in they actually hired a male stripper.
It was supposed to be a celebration on Capitol Hill, the president coming to sign landmark housing legislation.
Wow.
But instead, the day featured a shouting match between President Trump and a member of his own party, Senator Bill Cassidy.
Poor Bill.
Everyone hear my question. Interrupt me. I didn't care to be interrupted.
He looks so, distraught. He looks like a child that just got absolutely vilified.
Meeting with Senate Republicans, the president grew angry at Cassidy, who was among those who voted last night to curb the president's authority on Iran. At one point, each told the other to sit down.
Oof.
And I'm not going to be bullied.
Trump downplayed the tension.
I think we had a really great meeting.
Squabble overshadowed the passage of the bipartisan bill.
So I think we had a really great meeting.
Increasing the nation's housing supply and lowering costs.
Who needs houses when you don't have a secure vote?
To buy them. The president abruptly canceled the event to sign it into law.
Yikes.
With this social media post. Upset the Senate has not passed one of his top priorities, a package of national voting restrictions known as the Save America Act, which Senate leaders say they...
Listen, I'm not even fully against President Bullfrog on this one. I'm actually 30%, listen, 30%, I think this is the Save America Act in general wouldn't be inherently a bad idea to make sure that every individual person who is able to vote right now has the identification to prove themselves. And as an 18-year-old, you should have a driver's license or something to identify yourself at that point. But regardless of that, regardless of whatever, 70% is me disagreeing with this because I think this is a bad time to die on this hill.
Don't have the votes to pass. The cancellation
This is saying we are going to find the cure for cancer and then saying, wait a minute, no. You need to address the fact that rhubarb production has been down. The last few years, ladies and gentlemen, it's getting hard to find rhubarb anywhere these days. I don't know anybody that grows it. I know one bitch who grows it, and I'm not revealing because then my supplier is going to be, by the way, rhubarb right now is more valuable than weed.
Lawmakers. It's not helpful. It's not helpful.
It's utterly amazing. Trump is running away from one of the very few accomplishments that could actually help the American...
He had a moment there for a second. He had to pause. Roll that back real quick. Chuck Schumer.
From one of the very few accomplishments that could actually help the American people.
Oh my God.
And Republicans had been hoping to campaign on that housing bill ahead of the midterm elections. Now, it can still become law even without the president's signature, so long as he doesn't veto it within the next 10 days. Tony.
Well, let's hope.
Thank you very much.
Let's hope that he's feeling nice, ladies and gentlemen. I want to, because of Alan Greenspan's recent death, 60 Minutes has been rerunning a few of their past pieces where they interviewed Alan Greenspan, where he testified as to what the demeanor of the past presidents were. And I am deeply fascinated by the past presidents, especially due to the fact that, I have family members that tell me about what they remember from those previous administrations. My grandpa thoroughly really remembers the Nixon administration. Granted, his daughter and his son were born right around the time of Nixon and Gerald Ford, so it's kind of a hard time to forget. But in general, I just love the reviewal. I love reviewing time to figure out really, compared to what we're living with now, how nutty were our previous presidents. I really think people forget just how kind of based Nixon was.
Greenspan writes that Nixon was anti-Semitic, anti-Italian, anti-Greek, anti-Slovak. I don't know anybody he was pro.
That's like, if you're gonna be a hateful son of a bitch, I love the fact that it's like, I can't think of a single person he even liked. I think he even hated, like, Protestants and shit.
Greenspan writes that Nixon was anti-Semitic, anti-Italian, anti-Greek,
anti-Slovak.
I don't know anybody he
What
was
did the
pro.
Slovaks do?
And Gerald Ford?
Extraordinary human being.
But he wasn't the smartest, you say.
No, he was not the smartest.
The nicest
But he
people
was
aren't
most
always.
normal.
And that's
Oh,
what
most
you ended
normal.
up admiring, the normality.
Well, it was also the ethical base of the man.
Oh.
We'd be discussing policy and say, let's forget some of the facts. And it's just the right thing to do for the economy.
And the other presidents didn't focus to that extent.
Yeah.
Of Ronald
Interesting.
Reagan, he said he had an odd form of intelligence which he used to improve the country's self-image. He writes that he had a, quote, terrible relationship with the first president, George Bush.
I have a soft spot for HW because I feel like he was the last normal politician we had, in the sense where, this is, by the way, this is pre my birth. I was born in 2003 for reference. I know people are going like, oh, you're this, whatever, you're a Bush baby. Shut up. Second administration Bush. And honestly, it's better. It's better because that means I'm not an old fuck. Listen, shut up. Shush. I understand 1993 is not old. I understand. Yeah, I get it. 1989, a birth year in that year is not old. I mean, to be fair, you're as old as the Michael Keaton Batman, and that's, it's not old, it's just like a couple decades, and admittedly, that's probably weird to hear. But anyways, I have a soft spot for H.W. Bush, because, listen, he just worked in the CIA quietly. He helped kill Kennedy quietly. He then married Aleister Crowley's child quietly. He was a quiet member of the ruling class, a quiet member of the Skull and Bones Society. He was a quiet mover. He was literally like Megan Thee Stallion. He made moves in silence. And everybody, listen, if you're a Clinton child, if you remember the years of Clinton, like where listen, the economy maybe was rocking. It was fun to go get Wendy's for really cheap back then, and gas was a pretty good price. Whoop-de-doo. I think that's fantastic. But what can you deny, though, that the shakiness of his later years, the eventual downturn of like, oh, are we really going to elect this loser Al Gore who just has the perpetual energy of not really scolding you, but just kind of talking down to every person? But he saw. Didn't you watch the debate? He kept sighing. We can't have somebody who keeps going right into the mic. It's so annoying. We can't elect this stupid. And then there was obviously the infidelity, as I'll call it, with listen, as though they were even really married in the first place. They both have probably had sex more so with children than each other. Let's just call it what it is. That's what the Clintons are. It's what we've always known they have been. It's just like a truth. It's unfortunate. But okay, H.W. Bush was this chapter where, like, okay, maybe he's going to go commit a couple war crimes here and there, but you're not going to be hearing about it all the time. Most importantly, because social media doesn't exist. But after this, the internet is out. After this, it's way more conspiracies are getting well known. People are passing around less so books and more so talking on online forums. 9/11's going to blow up a bunch of shit. It's going to wake a bunch of people up to things. COVID even more so. Assassinations coming up even more so. Clinton's era was nuts. Bush's era was nuts. Obama's era was nuts. Everybody likes to pretend that it was sunshine and rainbows, but like, he was killing people all the time and nobody likes to talk about it. Nobody likes to talk about how he was against gay marriage in the first term. Nobody likes to talk about all of the messier angles of his administration, how he was trying to silence whistleblowers, how he expanded the surveillance state, how in general, you can call him a servant to Wall Street just as much as any Republican before him. He also, he got the economy playing in that same sort of way. I don't care. He has things to criticize, and anybody that pretends that he was perfect is not living in reality. If anything, he was like a Bush era 2.0 kinda. He was a continuation of the war on terror policies, and he was more so an expansion of our wars in the Middle East. And Libya was an absolute disaster. Everybody likes to be like, oh, everything we're doing in Iran is such a travesty. Libya was being blown to smithereens every week in the Barack Obama administration. Every week. Syria happened under the Bush, not the Bush, but the Barack Obama administration. Like, I understand. In Bush, he had Abu Ghraib. He had torture prisons, black site torture prisons. They still exist, by the way. The CIA still tortures people, but they do it in areas that we just haven't found yet. Folks, I'm just saying, no matter how much you don't like the his accent, maybe he just bothered you, the George H.W. Bush type. You didn't like his put on fake, I'm a real down to earth American, even though I went to some of the finest blue blood, universities this fucking country has to offer. And it doesn't matter if my father was Senator Prescott Bush. It doesn't matter that I come from this essentially Kennedy-like family in politics. I'm just like, I understand the troubles of the average American man. Now watch me get defeated for a second term by getting votes siphoned off by Ross Perot. Like, listen, the George H.W. Bush administration was the last normal one we had. And then, by the way, to get back to my timeline, after Barack Obama, which I told you is nuts, everybody likes to pretend it wasn't, but it was nuts. Then we have Trump, which turned up the dial even more. And then Biden after that, which in a way turned up the dial. It turned up the dial on a lot of the left-wing politics that made a lot of people upset because they were going too far left on a lot of the DEI politics. They were going too far left on a lot of inclusionary things that inadvertently were just sort of racist policies in the sense where they disadvantaged you based on the color of your skin. And that's not great. That's not something that we want in either direction. So, and it's not called reverse racism. Racism towards any race is racism. We can just call it what it is. And then the Biden administration fell, unfortunately. The cramming down of the vaccine mandate that literally had to be shut down by the Supreme Court. The people want to talk about the CHIPS Act. They want to talk about all the things that he got done. He also, if you want to talk about this, when the Supreme Court told him not to forgive student loan debt, he then ignored the courts, then setting the precedent that he would eventually, he's like, Trump can do whatever he wants. Biden ignores courts now. Now there's nothing in the high courts in all the land that can stop the president, especially now that Biden has broken the glass ceiling. So, listen, we can talk about the way that we got here. We can talk about how nutty things have been. But if you want to sit back and pretend that George H.W. Bush wasn't a reprieve from all this madness we're living through today, you're out of your goddamn mind.
Who pressured Greenspan publicly.
And interest rates should be
lower now.
I was shocked because nobody talked about Federal Reserve policy in public.
Was what they did improper?
Oh, indeed, yes.
They crossed a line in your view.
Well, if you have, as we do by statute, an independent Federal Reserve, it clearly is in opposition to what the purpose of the law was.
President Bush later said it was Greenspan's fault he lost the election in '92 to Bill Clinton. Clinton was the only Democrat Greenspan served under, and he says the smartest of all the presidents he knew.
Oh, he has to be.
I clearly was a Republican. I had to admit that he was an extraordinarily effective president.
You seem to have gotten along with him best of all your presidents.
The economy was rocking.
The bottom line is what he called our relationship.
This man was the former Federal Reserve Chair, so I just wanted to make sure if anybody forgot who Alan Greenspan was since last episode.
He said, I think, are the odd couple.
They indeed were, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, let's move on to our first story of many today. I know, we're already 14 minutes in and we're not even on to our first story because we were just rambling that first bit. I'm pretty decent at getting a long, this is like a cold intro, you know what I mean? Imagine if The Office had an intro, like a cold intro that was 14 minutes and then you heard yeah, exactly. That's kind of exactly what we're doing here. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm distraught. I'm heartbroken. Do I sound sad? Unfortunately, I just don't have the energy to put it on right now because I'm going to be honest with you. If it was the ground underneath me shaking, maybe I'd be able to put out a little bit of like, but I'm just like, listen, I'm a little tired. I'm still getting over this throat thing. So like, we'll just talk about it as though I sound horrifically heartbroken. Please put on the affect. Like when I pretend, believe me. When I say I'm heartbroken, please believe that I'm heartbroken for the Venezuelan people. That's right. It's for the Venezuelans now. Look at this. We as Americans need to develop a little bit of sympathy for the Venezuelan people, because not only did we, did we shake up their government a little bit? It's a shake up. That's what we can call it. But now there's a humanitarian crisis unfolding there. A seismic doublet, a powerful magnitude 7.24 shock, was then followed just 39 seconds later by a massive 7.5 magnitude main shock. Terrified residents report that there was absolutely no time for evacuations as the twin tremors struck during the national holiday evening when most families were gathered inside their homes, completely cutting off escape routes before shaking could even stop. The structural devastation across the nation has been catastrophic. Venezuela's acting president, Delcy Rodriguez, acting president, they have a few, honestly, I think they expect us to grab one every now and then, so I think they have a couple just like in the freezer. Declaring the coastal state of La Guaria. We're trying, people, as they're calling it an official disaster zone. At least 164 people have been confirmed dead, and nearly 1,000 others are hospitalized with severe injuries. The true scale of the tragedy also remains buried beneath the rubble. Officials report that dozens of high-rise buildings and residential complexes have been completely pancaked. Interesting choice of words, including a prominent 22-story skyscraper in the capital of Caracas. See, if it's a name I've heard before, not like, listen, I've read the name La Guaria. I don't know, something like that. But I've heard news people say Caracas, so it's easier for me to pronounce. I've heard it in other places, so excuse me now and then when I struggle with a word. That's unfortunate. With over 27,000 people still currently reported missing, rescue workers are fearing that the death toll is going to inevitably continue to surge. Emergency response operations are currently locked in a desperate race against the clock battle, heavily hampered by the near total collapse of local infrastructure. Obviously, power grids are down across major municipalities. The government has preemptively severed gas lines to prevent a catastrophic explosion among the collapsed ruins, compounding the gridlock. The main runway at Simón Bolívar International Airport sustained a severe structural damage and remains entirely closed to commercial flights. As the international search and rescue team from Switzerland, Spain, and Colombia, Switzerland, my God, they're a little far. I'm just going to be honest with you. Imagine you're sitting under like a 15, 16-story building right now that is pancaked. You feel your lungs getting crushed and you're like, God, help's on the way from Switzerland. That's a great, it says you have a little bit of comfort. You'd be better off getting saved by one of those Boston Dynamic dogs. All right. They're scrambling to deploy heavy equipment and rescue dogs. Hey, I just mentioned that. And exhausted local volunteers are digging through mounds of concrete with their bare hands, listening closely for faint cries of survivors trapped beneath the debris. I obviously don't have a camera crew or the budget that CBS News does. So let's get a little bit of their on-the-ground takes.
Breaking news out of Venezuela, where a state of emergency has been declared after two
How bad can it be?
Earthquakes struck last night. Now, the full extent of damage is still being assessed, but at this moment, at least 164 people have been killed, nearly 1,000 others injured. We expect those numbers to rise. Acting President Delcy Rodriguez says dozens of buildings have collapsed. Rescue efforts to find survivors are also underway.
God damn.
Quakes measuring in at magnitude 7.2 and 7.5 respectively hit the northwest part of the country less than a minute apart from each other. CBS News is first to report that Secretary of State Marco Rubio has spoken with Rodriguez to offer support from the U.S. President Trump has also weighed in, writing that the U.S., quote, stands ready, willing, and able to help. CBS News' Jared Hill has all the latest information for us. Jared, good morning. What are we learning about what's happening in Venezuela right now?
Incredibly devastating here. We're learning that the death toll is rising ever since this struck just a couple of hours ago yesterday evening, and it's expected to continue to rise as teams search through all of the rubble after these historic back-to-back earthquakes rocked Venezuela.
Wow, looks like some trouble.
Venezuela are in ruins after powerful twin earthquakes rocked the South American country Wednesday evening.
Call me crazy, but that looks bad.
7.2 magnitude. The second, less than a minute later, 7.5. Panic and widespread damage swept across the capital city of Caracas, where people fled buildings before they crumbled. Like a horror movie, one woman described it.
Un hecho de grave consecuencia.
Consecuencia?
Calling it a serious event with grave consequences. The epicenter of the back-to-back quakes was about 100 miles west of Caracas. Dozens have been reported dead. Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced the U.S. is sending search and rescue teams, medical resources, and humanitarian assistance to Venezuela immediately.
It was like a minute and a half. The entire house shaking. And
the whole house started shaking, man.
Rafael Puncela says he's concerned about the long-term impacts on the country.
I said, fuck, man.
With the economy as it is,
Economy.
this is going to be a big hit.
Run that back real quick. Economy, run that back real quick.
It worries me that with the economy,
Hell yeah.
This is going to be a big hit to our economy.
Economy.
There will be a lot of damage.
My brother, open your eyes.
Through the rubble of collapsed buildings, searching for signs of life. Sometimes finding moments to applaud in the midst of the devastation. All as families and neighbors wait for answers in a new, uncertain future. Now, for context here, these earthquakes are some of the strongest to hit Venezuela in about a century. The shaking so intense, it can be felt throughout that country as well as parts of Colombia and Brazil.
Yikes. Well,
Jared, thank you.
Best of luck to you, South American nations. This is regrettable and unfortunate. I don't know what else to say, so I'm gonna move on to my next story. Ladies and gentlemen, sorry, my sympathy is extended to the people of Venezuela. I almost forgot for a second which country it took place in. I'm sorry, my mind was ready to move on to the next story. All right, the Senate, in a reversal of their general foreign policy landscape, they have now dramatically flipped on their stance on a major war powers measure targeting the conflict in Iran after Trump's shouting match. They're not happy. They're going, look, we gotta lay down the hammer a little bit. We gotta throw at least one book at you. We're not gonna throw the book at you. If we threw the book at you, you'd be going away for pedophilia, but we gotta throw a book at you. So they picked up, I don't know, War and Peace or something, and they tossed it across the room, and it missed him. It went over his shoulder. But less than 24 hours after joining major Democrats to pass a high-profile resolution restricting the administration's military authority, key Senate Republicans have completely altered their votes, effectively killing the rebuke. The abrupt legislative about face has handed the White House a massive victory, ensuring full executive control over ongoing operations and the fragile peace framework in the Middle East. So they're saying now, listen, if we're not going to have a deal, if we're not going to be peaceful, if Trump says that we're going to go nuclear on this option, we're going to give him as much as we can in order to make sure that he has all the tools in his arsenal. Now, will this result in something catastrophic for the nation? Maybe, but that's a chance we're willing to take. Now, listen. This sudden capitulation is just after the closed-door GOP Senate lunch that has, as we heard earlier, it completely degenerated. It was just fierce. It was theatrical. It was just shouting between the president and Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy. And according to multiple sources in the room, the confrontation erupted when the president demanded an explanation from the four Republicans who had crossed party lines to support the war powers limit. Cassidy reportedly stood his ground ground, berating the administration for dragging on the conflict to last 4 weeks into a 4-month-long, meant to last 4 weeks into a 4-month-long campaign without any clear objectives, prompting the president to then lose his temper, raise his voice, and reportedly brand Cassidy as a lunatic. The two lawmakers then shouted at each other at maximum volume. Cassidy later told reporters he made zero apologies for standing up for the American people. Good on him. That's what we call, as good as it gets Republicans. The raw intensity of the closed-door blowout sent shockwaves, though, through the rest of the Republican caucus, fearing a catastrophic public fracture ahead of the critical upcoming midterm elections. Obviously, leadership, they're successfully going to pressure all of the wavering senators to fall back in line and reverse their positions overnight. That is how it's always worked. Watch House of Cards. It's not hard. It's not hard. This is literally like shit that you can watch as like a grandpa. If you have a Netflix subscription, you can get like a Macbethian, like a sort of like they'll give you he talks to you on the side. He's like, this is my inner deepest thoughts. This is how I'm scheming, and that gives you admittedly, Kevin Spacey doesn't go full honesty, and he doesn't have like a satanic ritual or have sex with a child. He just pushes a woman in front of a train, but it's still like a great show, and it gives you a little bit of a peek into the inner workings of how politics is more so about who you know. As the dust is settling, though, from the drama, the administration's aggressive policy of enforced compliance in the region is still remaining entirely intact. The Senate's short-lived rebellion is thoroughly defeated. Don't worry about it.
Now take a live look at Capitol Hill this morning, where the Senate, in a late-night vote, chose not to rebuke the Trump administration over its military conflict in Iran. That's a reversal from earlier in the week. Just hours earlier, political fireworks erupted between President Trump and multiple Republican senators over Trump's power on that very action. News Nation White House correspondent Libby Dean has been following these events.
Libby Dunn?
And President Trump held this closed-door meeting with those Republican senators, Libby. This didn't get just a
Libby
little heated.
Dunn.
I mean, this devolved into a full-on yelling match behind closed doors. What happened?
What happened?
It did, Marky, and President Trump went into this meeting hoping he could gain enough GOP support to pass the Save America Act. That's the elections overhaul bill, and a top priority for the president. But he actually left that meeting after some of those heated exchanges, as you mentioned, Marky, and the president apparently blew up at Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy over a separate issue, with Cassidy accusing the president of not being forthcoming with the American people.
Bill Cassidy, listen, I'm not saying that wrinkles are anything to fight. They're natural. They're beautiful. However, if your forehead is starting to look like, in the Arby's menu, they like show the picture of the sandwich with all of the roast beef cuts, so they look like just that perfect stack. When your forehead lines look like a stack of Arby's fucking we have the meats, I think Botox should have been in your past. It should have been you should get in a time machine now and tell your past stupid self to stop moving his eyebrows so goddamn much.
Ron Ward Cassidy characterized the meeting as intense and says the two got into a shouting match. The argument got so heated, at one point a senator had to pull Cassidy back down into his seat. Despite the exchange,
What?
You saw President Trump emerge from the meeting saying it was good.
We had a great time.
The party is unified, but he did express some frustration.
We had a wonderful experience.
So, I think we had a really great meeting, and we're very proud of the party. We like our leader. We like everybody really in the room. I don't like a few people, but that's okay. I think you know who they are.
I'm not gonna slit their throat and throw them into Lake Michigan like that one child that I did back in the day. Read the Epstein files.
With the support he wants and needs to pass that Save America Act, but it is, of course, a top priority for the president, because you'll remember yesterday he actually canceled a bipartisan bill signing and says that he won't sign that bill, which is the largest housing affordability reform in decades, until Congress passes the Save America Act, Marky.
Yeah. There was overwhelming support for that housing bill, too. I mean, yesterday was just, it was chaotic on Capitol Hill. But, Libby, why isn't there broad support for that Save bill? Why can't the president get enough
It's
GOP
got
support
some
on that one?
issues in people's minds.
The
I don't
votes
think
just
it's
aren't
awful.
there right now, Marky, the bill, though, what it does is it would require proof of citizenship in order to vote. Republicans, they do.
That's a good idea.
Support the measure.
No, but it should already be that way. Kind of like, I agree. Like, there should be a proof of citizenship. And when people go, oh, but voting is a right. Yeah, so is, like, you have a right to get a license. You have a right to get a birth certificate. You have a right to identify yourself. That is actually your responsibility as a citizen. So to claim that, like, you're standing in the way of my, like, I have a right to my benefits or anything. Yeah, but when you turn up to the benefits, the place where, like, let's say you served in the military, you go to the Veterans Associations, you're like, okay, give me my however much I get now for the rest of my life, because I, like, gave up, like, a hip for you back in the day. I can't walk right and whatnot, and my body's been beaten down by time. So then they're like, okay, at least prove to us that you are who you are. And do the Army veterans get all upset? Do they go like, I fucking fought for this, I shouldn't have to prove anything? No, some of them do. Some of them more particularly emotional and, like, the weird ones that don't understand that we just got to know that who's doing what they're doing is who they claim to be. I don't think that that's an inherently bad idea. I think that it's actually a decent one. And anybody who, has any fundamental issues with it, please let me know. I'd love to know. If you go, it's not within people's ability to get ID of any variety. Yes, it is. And I refuse to accept that when you're trying to go, well, it costs so goddamn much. You're going to find a way. Every person does, and they have the ability for you to get things. That's what the government has, the options for you. You just are not the one that's taking the resources available.
Trump's big hurdle here is that he needs 53 Republican senators and at least 7 Democrats to reach the 60-vote threshold to pass that bill. 4 Republicans, as we know, have expressed approval and have blocked the bill from being attached to a larger
Susan Collins
package. So you've seen Senators Susan Collins, Mitch McConnell, Lisa Murkowski, Tom Tillis.
How is Mitch McConnell, like, isn't he in a coma right now? Like, I'm going to be honest with you. He's been hospitalized and shit. How is he even, like, allowed to vote?
Those are the Republicans President Trump needs to convince here. Some are taking issue with attaching this bill to unrelated immigration or funding packages like we've seen in the past, but others, like Kentucky Senator Mitch McConnell, he sees it as federal overreach into state-run elections. So the president's got an uphill battle, and his team does, in convincing those on the Hill and those senators to pass this legislation. But he says he won't sign any major legislation until the Save America Act gets passed, and we saw that all play out yesterday. Marky?
Yeah, he's making it a bargaining chip. All right, Libby Deegan, live from the White House.
Thank you, Libby Deegan, live from the White House. We really appreciate it. He doubled down. This is from C-SPAN's page directly. I love his directness. I love how, I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to do it because they're not doing what I want them to do.
About what?
In the housing bill that you didn't sign today.
No, I said about signing the housing bill. I want to see what happens. We said, look, the housing bill is housing. I made billions of dollars with housing. I know housing better than anybody, maybe anywhere. It's all about the interest rate.
Wait.
Lower the interest rates, you can have all the housing.
Lower the interest rates, you're going to have all the housing.
I don't want to hurt people that own houses too.
Own houses.
These people, for the first time in their lives, they have valuable houses.
Valuable houses.
Rich. I don't want to hurt them either.
I don't want to hurt them.
What you want to do is, what good for everyone, get the interest rates down. We have this numbskull that was...
You're the one hanging out with all the Jews.
He had the Fed before, and he's a stupid person. And we call him too late, because he was too late with the interest rates all the time. We need low interest rates. Low interest rates will solve everything.
Everything.
Now, despite that, we're doing well with housing. But where we're really doing well is oil is plummeting and costs are coming down. Affordability, we're doing great. The Democrats gave us a tremendous affordability problem, and we're reducing prices a lot.
We're reducing prices a lot. Good for you. I can't wait to see those reduced prices when they eventually decide to show up. Ladies and gentlemen, let's move on to the rapid fire section of today's headlines. Lots of things you need to know about in order to keep that media diet healthy of yours. A lot of things that are also just kind of fun to talk about, like Senator Ted Cruz. Listen, while he might not have a lot of the greatest opinions, he recently called for the Internal Revenue Service to be abolished. And his campaign for the South Carolina gubernatorial candidate, Alan Wilson, a Republican, he went on this little bit of a tangent. Maybe you agree with him, maybe you don't. I don't know.
First, I think at the federal level, we should abolish the IRS.
God, he just take a shower. One.
There are 93,000 agents agents at the IRS. I think we should put a padlock on that building and put every one of them down on our southern border.
What? You want to deport IRS workers?
By the way, if you think about it, can you imagine you're coming to this country illegally through heat, through incredibly difficult circumstances. You get across the river, and the first thing you see is 93,000 IRS agents.
What?
Heck, you turn around and go home too.
Why is he doing like stand up right now? I don't get it. And by the way, the room he's in does not have AC because he is sweating through his shirt. Ladies and gentlemen, speaking of sweating and AC, France is having these very public debates now over whether or not air conditioning is good for the environment. Apparently, it's a real big concern. Listen, I know I'm doing an English accent. I don't have the energy for a French one right now. But they're like, oh, we're just going to sit and smoke. Actually, that lowers your body temperature quite a bit more than, you know, you got yourself a little, you got like a coat, you got yourself a hot coffee, put an ice cube inside of it. Where are you going to get the ice from? You got a fridge at home?
France is arguing over something many people wouldn't think twice about. Air conditioning. AC is a given across much of Europe, which is...
It's like debated over there. They go like, is this the same as like giving everybody cancer?
Sweltering through a heat wave. Here in France, many schools, hospitals and homes don't have it. And that's become the focus of a fierce debate. Is it essential protection against extreme heat or an indulgence the planet cannot afford?
I think I don't need it because I'm young and I can survive this kind of event. It's not a big deal.
It's not a solution. It's going to help to people feel good, but it's not going to help the environment.
Environment? Shut the fuck up. Nearly 90% of U.S. households have some form of air conditioning. This is largely the South, Midwest regions in general, and some milder parts of the Pacific Northwest. But in general, they have AC.
Thing for a planet? With France battling record temperatures and parts of the country grinding to a halt, now the debate on how to stay cool is heating up too.
So drown yourself? Apparently over 40 French people have drowned themselves in rivers, in runoff, all this shit trying to stay cool.
Political issue ahead
like, just get an AC.
next year's presidential election. Far-right leader Marine Le Pen has promised...
Marine Le Pen, listen, she will be prime minister one day because people realize she turns up with her gross-looking arms, with her really, really just bizarre build. Her father, he was a titan in French politics for his own views that are just a little interesting. And maybe does she agree with him very much so? Probably like a lot. And is she probably going to lead France in a terrifying direction? Yes. But really think about it. How terrifying can the French get? How terrifying can the French really get? They're some of the least intimidating people, fighter-wise, country-wise. They have nothing when it comes to like regional power. I understand that they were like, oh, sure, we're gonna influence Canada a bunch and shit. Really, you can't compare empires with the Spanish, even the Portuguese. Weirdly, they got you beat. With their level of influence. Tell me, would you rather hang out with somebody from Canada or somebody from Brazil? Brazil, 10 times out of 10. And I say this, being somebody who's lived in Minnesota and met many Canadians.
This nationwide air conditioning plan, if elected. She argues the French shouldn't have to suffer through increasingly intense heat waves.
The absurdity of people having to die in the heat. If I am elected president, I will put into place a massive air conditioning plan.
But her rival
Nice.
on the far left, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, says
Jean-Luc
installing AC
Mélenchon.
everywhere would only make the problem worse by increasing energy consumption and emissions.
We mustn't do it. Installing air conditioning everywhere means causing more
As
harm.
temperatures climb, more French people are looking for relief, with some even sleeping outside. Fans and portable cooling units are flying off the shelves, with long lines forming outside Paris stores. And despite the debate, air conditioning has become more common, with the share of homes equipped with AC nearly doubling between 2016 and 2020, according to the country's ecological transition agency.
We are 5 seconds away from these freaks in Europe going back to like the days of like no clothing practically. They walk around in maybe like a blanket that they've strapped onto themselves. They're going to start walking around like the Greeks. I really see this in their future. They're no shoes. They're going to go with sandals maybe at most, but most people are going to be walking around Europe, kind of like Socrates, kind of like you're going to see a lot more brown people, but it's because the white people have gotten brown. You're going to be walking around Paris and it's going to feel like ancient Greece. There's going to be markets of just like, they're going to look interracial, but they're like 50th generation Frenchmen. You don't have anything to worry about here, all right? They're not a product of immigration. They're a product of the natural land, la terre, underneath their feet. That is, listen, the French are an interesting people. Would I ever visit their nation? Probably not. Probably not. Why is that? Because my nation in general, it has too much to offer. It's way too interesting. I don't think anybody else could compare. And also, France, you've confirmed the first case of Ebola in your country on Wednesday. That's unfortunate. They say they've identified the first case of Ebola in their country, saying that a doctor who traveled to the Democratic Republic of Congo, where an outbreak began last month, has tested positive for the virus, and authorities said the risk to the wider population, though, is still low. I'm still not interested. Like, I'm going to be honest with you. I know bad things happen in America. We had a 13-year-old boy who was not seriously hurt, but he jumped off a Disney ride. You know what I mean? That shit's kind of fun. It was like a 50-foot waterfall ride. It's pretty awesome. And even in my region, I still find more interesting stories than France would ever have to offer. Christine Pryor, she has admitted to faking being a therapist in Minnesota. What are we talking about?
A woman from the Fargo-Moorhead area is now charged in Minnesota with identity theft for using the names of real licensed mental health and recovery providers, getting hired at reputable agencies, and seeing real patients.
Like, this is a Melissa McCarthy movie.
Christine Pryor has already been convicted of this in North Dakota. She told their
this is Tammy. This is identity thief. This is spy.
She would scan
this is therapist.
The list of licensed providers who also have the name Christine, then impersonate them with forged documents.
This is
Christine Weisner and Christine Martinick, two reputable licensed providers in
Wow.
Minnesota. They had no idea until they were contacted by authorities that their identities were stolen.
Oh.
Pryor saw at least 169 patients in Minnesota and at least 150 in North Dakota.
Wow.
Working at places like the Lotus Center and Lakeland Mental Health Center.
Lotus Center? Wait a minute. Any place that's naming itself after a region where you eat the flower and then you get docile, you just feel good all the time. You never want to leave. It is kind of a good example. It's kind of like a good allegory for therapy and religion and all of these things that people think are going to make them feel whole and deep inside and whatnot. It's really interesting to hear. That's like Catholics calling themselves Rape Inc. It's like, oh, that's straight to the point.
Those places haven't responded to me yet about how they allowed that to happen, but the court papers say Pryor forged everything down to her college degree and transcripts.
Whew.
Over the course of several years, Pryor received well over $100,000 in taxpayer money, allegedly posing as an addiction counselor,
Good for her.
marriage and family therapist, and psychotherapist.
Good for her. This lady's baller. I want more Melissa McCarthy movies. I'm sorry. I know that she might be deeply involved in whatever they have going on in Hollywood. I don't care. I don't care how many daggers she's held in her hand that have been in a 2-year-old sternum. I don't care how many blood rituals she's probably attended. I don't care. Her last name is McCarthy. It sounds close enough to McCartney, and I have a very deep soft spot for the Beatles. Ladies and gentlemen, the Trump administration cannot stop SNAP dollars from being used to buy candy soda now. Apparently, a judge has ruled. The federal government cannot block benefits from supplemental nutritional assistance, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, the nation's target food aid program from being used to buy candy and soda and other sugary drinks, according to some fucking loser who wants kids to get type 3 diabetes.
The government can't block people from using SNAP benefits to buy candy and sugary drinks.
Boo!
That's the ruling now from a district judge in D.C.
I was in favor of this ban because I was in favor of it just for the TikTok videos we were getting of black ladies yelling at the camera about how I can't buy my kid no more Kool-Aid. I can't buy my kid with this shit and EBT.
Wrapping restrictions the Trump administration put in place on SNAP benefits in 23 states. The judge say that the ruling came because the government didn't follow its own definition of food.
What?
She says it wasn't a comment on whether the plan was a good idea. The restrictions are part of the Make America Healthy Again campaign, and the administration hasn't said if it plans to appeal yet or not.
Listen, if you're fundamentally against Make America Healthy Again, I understand not liking whatever, the nation, the movement's leader, not liking RFK Jr. himself, not liking whatever. Yes, I understand that. If you disagree, though, with the core concept of wanting people to eat food that gives them cancer less, food that develops their Alzheimer's and dementia risks, like exceedingly so, if you want to get 70% of the American diet kind of away from ultra-processed foods, then in general, Make America Healthy Again is a great idea that all of us can support. This is the same as saying Make America Great Again, except, that's a little bit more divisive in the sense where making America great again, when do you mean it was great? For who? How about the idea is Make America Great and Make America Healthy? Let's drop the agains. Let's stop pining for a past that never existed and start looking forward to something that we can build together. That's right, something feel good, something that'll just make you feel warm inside when you hear that message. You know what I mean? Let's all make our diets better together. Because then, if you have control over your health, you have control over really everything else in your life. Your problems all dissolve and you're actually perfect. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the closest thing we have to God on this planet. In Minnesota, our final story before we go ahead. Actually, no, we've got two more and then we'll move on to our final story. In Minnesota, Democratic U.S. Representative Angie Craig, got to get a more memorable name, and Minnesota DFL Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, awful name, change it, and they're both vying for the U.S. Senate seat. They're both ladies. The candidates debated several issues. They recently had their debate, including they debated immigration enforcement on the Twin Cities area. Let's take a look at a little bit of what they had to say, why don't we?
Big debate took place, and you may have missed it because it was over the weekend. This was on PBS's Almanac, and this is the race for Minnesota's Senate seat. So the race between Minnesota Congresswoman Angie Craig and Minnesota's Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan. Take a listen to some of the answers they had.
I couldn't help but regret giving this administration any additional authority under immigration. And so I felt like I needed to be honest with Minnesotans that I did regret that vote.
I think the thing that's really important to note here is that every other Minnesota Democrat voted no on the Lake andRiley Act.
What?
Klobuchar,
No, the Lake and Riley Act was actually a good... What? That was a good idea.
Senator Tina Smith, Kelly Morrison...
Oh, she's just making a point. Oh, all of these people are loyal to their party and nothing else.
What happens from here? Well, you got the primary election. That's going to be held in August.
How exciting.
The primary election will go on to face November's GOP candidate. Now, remember, the GOP endorsed Adam Schwarzy, Michelle Tafoya, and Royce White are also in that race.
Well, only time will tell, ladies and gentlemen. Who knows? If you've placed your bets in the comments and then come on back to see if you were right. All right. Fries with a side of AI is what CBC News is calling this story for dumb. Major U.S. fast food chains are now turning to artificial intelligence to run their drive-thrus. If you know about this, I've been unfortunately skirmished by this. Skirmish, the vocab word of the day, means, you can Google it actually. Let's make that the mystery. If you come this far, you deserve to figure out what skirmish means yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've been skirmished by this, if you've been really toiled under the process of having to figure out how these, you're like, what? This person doesn't sound like they're enunciating properly. That's because the majority of the people you're talking to at the drive-thru window now are robots. You're like, how do they not? They don't feel like they're really listening to me. Unfortunately, and actually fortunately so, I'm done with drive-thrus. I hate the process junk. I can't stand any more fast food. I think I'm mostly done with it. And now thankfully I'm going to be missed with all this shit. I'm going to be missed. I'm not going to have any of this affect my life. I don't want it to. I remember the old days of going to the subway window. You'd have to it was back in the days when there was a screen and they didn't have the AI shit. This was the most high-tech thing they had. You just go up and you press whatever you want to order. And it's like I put together my sandwich while somebody yells behind me because I'm taking fucking 5 minutes to figure out their navigations and shit. White Castle is one of the main people doing this stupid AI voice stuff.
American burger chain White Castle calls their AI chatbot Julia. The
Julia
AI listens to the customer and responds to questions. Inside, the order pops up and prepares the food.
And if there's a problem, a real person takes over.
At first we had a few hiccups, but we straightened them all out and it's been doing good.
Store manager Denise Harley says she's embracing her new digital coworker.
They just help us get the orders in and out faster.
Soon it'll be boxing your shit, and soon they won't need you, Miss Denise.
And some of the younger staff don't even remember a time when AI wasn't part of the team.
I thought it was going to be hard to work with, but actually kind of makes everything easier.
And she never calls in sick, right?
No.
That's the best thing about her. She don't be calling off on us.
Calling off on us.
AI ordering is more than 90% accurate. But how do customers feel about it?
If you do something out of the ordinary, it doesn't recognize it.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. I mean, it was no hassle.
This black guy's nice and cool. He's like, it's cool, no hassle. The white guy's like, if you ask for more mayonnaise than usual, it just doesn't understand it.
They got our order correct and everything. I just hate that that's what the world is coming to.
And then this black girl has like the most balanced take where she's like, yeah, it works. I got my shit. But like, I don't like the fact that AI probably is going to prevent my child from ever moving out of the house.
That just means less jobs for humans.
Look at this 10 out of 10. My favorite person that I've had get interviewed on the show. She is just like, she's a defier of what I expect every like on the street idiot to be. She has like a nuanced take. She's brilliant for the street. You know what I'm talking about? Ladies and gentlemen, shout out to that lady. Thank you so much for your excellent White Castle take and your excellent take, honestly, that is going to transcend time. People will listen to this years in the future and they're going to go, she was right. This lady in the White Castle drive-thru, she was appreciative of the fact that they got her order right, but she understood the veins that were running underneath this tree. It connected. It was a mycelium mushroom network that absolutely she understood the greater repercussions, and she was not happy. She stood like Napoleon when there was nothing left to do, and then she sat on the rock and then had a beautiful French song play in the background. Ladies and gentlemen, enough praise to her feet, because admittedly that was a solid take. Israel refusing to completely withdraw from Lebanon despite pressure from Iran. This is leading to a little bit more trouble in the Middle East, and this is our final story. We have to end with the good old J-State, the good old Jews. Listen, they are firmly rejecting the international pressure to fully withdraw their military forces from southern Lebanon. They're saying, we have a job to complete. We're going to complete the job. Despite an intense wave of pressure from Tehran and high-stakes U.S.-mediated negotiations currently underway in Washington, senior Israeli officials have declared that the military will maintain their newly established their border area and their security zone indefinitely. The defiant stance, though, in general, has thrown a wrench into the fragile, recently signed U.S.-Iran peace framework, which is not even a deal. We have a framework, a roadmap to peace, as we called it in the previous couple episodes. Regional experts are warning that the standoff could rapidly collapse the broader regional ceasefire. Speaking at a conference in Tel Aviv, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz, first name Israel, what are we doing? All right, explicitly stated that the military will not pull back its troops from southern Lebanon or from Hollywood. They're like, no, we will continue our forces in Hollywood. Even if faced with direct diplomatic demands from Washington, Benjamin Netanyahu had to jump in, heavily reinforcing the unyielding position, reiterating that Israeli forces will remain on the ground for as long as necessary to guarantee the safety of the northern residents. An Israeli government spokesperson made it clear that any future troop redeployments will only happen, redeployments, as in pulling it back from the region, will only happen after Hezbollah has been completely disarmed and demilitarized. This is, the war on terror stance, where you create an undefeatable, elusive sort of, is Hezbollah really gone? Because anybody can join at any time, and then they have a reason to, take over the entire Middle East and establish Greater Israel. So, firmly stating that the state will not tolerate a terrorist force anywhere near its northern border. You know where else it's not going to tolerate it? They're going to start saying that there's Hezbollah forces in Egypt. They're going to start saying that it's in Syria. Turkey and Egypt are the ones that are on the chopping block up next. If you don't believe me, just listen to what a few of them have been spitting out in private meetings. The refusal to pull out immediately triggered fury in Tehran, directly threatening the historic Memorandum of Understanding signed between the United States and Iran last week. Iranian officials have aggressively aggressively worked to link their own compliance with the peace deal to the total halt of military operations in Lebanon, warning that the U.S.-Iran accord cannot hold while Israeli forces occupy Lebanese territory. So, in a sharp escalation, commanders from the Iranian Revolutionary Guard warned that Israel must withdraw entirely or face eventual defeat. That's not the language that you want to hear when you're supposedly supposed to be getting closer to peace. They're threatening that unauthorized commercial vessels trying to cross the vital Strait of Hormuz will be aggressively dealt with. Meanwhile, behind closed doors in Washington, Trump's not just shellacking and absolutely, giving a tongue beating to Bill Cassidy in back doors in Washington as well. Negotiators are scrambling to salvage the peace process through a U.S.-backed pilot zones proposal. The compromise framework would see the Israeli military hand over control of a small number of select areas across the Lebanese National Army to test local security measures, while maintaining an active Israeli presence elsewhere. However, the Lebanese government officials are firmly demanding a total restoration of the state's sovereignty, and Israeli drones continuing to carry out targeted strikes against suspected fighters in the south. Radio and intelligence analysts warn that the diplomats are running out of time to prevent the ceasefire from shattering entirely.
Israel's defense minister says the country will not withdraw troops from southern Lebanon, even if the U.S. demands it. This comes after both Israel and Lebanon said they're now considering a U.S.-backed proposal for Israeli troops to pull out of some of the territory invaded in the conflict with Hezbollah. And as Lebanese residents slowly begin to return home, Israel's military said today it struck 2 Hezbollah fighters.
Don't go home yet. Don't go home yet. Not yet. Not yet. Not yet's the time.
The southern part of the country. Joining us now this morning is BBC News correspondent Charlotte Gallagher, who joins us from Jerusalem. Charlotte, look, Israeli and Lebanese officials, they're now reviewing some kind of deal here, but a top Israeli...
Does anybody else watch these news reporters in Jerusalem and one day just expect, like, the camera to be consumed and for them to disappear in this black smog-looking thing? That's what I fear from every reporter in the Middle East. I just fear that a missile is about to absolutely blow their camera crew to shit.
Israeli official is sort of adamantly saying that troops will not withdraw from the region. So what's the disconnect here?
She gets mid-sentence and
goes...
Well,
I think, as you say, there is definitely a disconnect going on here. So we heard about this pilot scheme where Israeli troops would withdraw from certain points inside southern Lebanon, and they would be replaced by Lebanese troops who would be guaranteeing security for Israeli communities living in northern Israel on the border with southern Lebanon. Then we hear from the Defense Minister Israel Katz, and he says, well, the IDF are going nowhere inside southern Lebanon. It's not safe for them to retreat and go back into Israel. They are staying there. So I think it shows you the internal divisions inside Israel. The Israeli government, Benjamin Netanyahu, he is fully aware that President Trump wants the fighting inside Lebanon to stop. He doesn't want it to endanger the peace deal with Iran. However, many Israeli politicians and many members of the Israeli public, they want the offensive inside southern Lebanon to go until Hezbollah has either been disarmed or completely destroyed. Oof. And really, it's going to be impossible for the Prime Minister to satisfy both those camps. But as you say at the moment, on the day where we
so you have an excuse for infinite conflict.
Straight away, the Defense Minister says that is not going to happen.
They're like, we have too much to lose. Have you seen the real estate space in northern Lebanon?
All right, as we mentioned, many residents are slowly traveling home after a period of intense fighting. What's the extent of the damage that they're finding when they return?
The scent of the damage? Like brimstone-y?
I mean, they are seeing some of the houses completely flattened, basically.
Oh, the extent.
Or severely damaged, certainly ones that you can't live in anymore, as you
said. Whoa. You, hold on. I understand some of these houses might be rubble. You can live in that. Unfortunately, like, listen, you're not going to feel like the Jeffersons living on the east side and moving on up. You're not going to feel like that. You're not going to feel like Annie living with the bald man, nice, prim style living. But you're going to be living. You'll be alive, unfortunately.
So people are trying to get home. We've seen huge queues on the roads going back to southern Lebanon. Thousands and thousands of people have been displaced and they're living in displacement camps.
Oh, huge queues, like cardboard cutouts of queue. Damn, guys, not only are they losing their villages and shit, but they're getting into QAnon now.
So obviously they want to go back home. But the Lebanon government and also Hezbollah have said, look, it might not be safe for you to go back to your homes. And if you see things on the floor and you don't know what they are, do not pick them up because they might be unexploded munitions, and you could either kill yourself.
Musicians? Hold on, back that up one more time. It's fine for me to have verbal slip-ups. I don't get paid big bucks, big money to do this show. She does.
Them up because they might be unexploded munitions.
Damn musicians.
Or really injure yourself. So there's a fear about that as well. And although the clashes have reduced, they are still continuing. We heard today that an Israeli drone strike had killed 2 people in southern Lebanon. Yesterday, 2 people were shot dead by the IDF. The IDF say they are Hezbollah fighters. So the clashes are still continuing. So for people wanting to return home to southern Lebanon, they're having to weigh up the risk of wanting to be back home, wanting to be out of displacement camps, but also not knowing if it's truly safe for them to go back.
How about just, take a break, take a chill. You can come back maybe later. Give it like 25 years. Give it a solid chunk of time. I promise you might not even miss it that much. You know what I mean? Jared Kushner, they're already having the fucking construction sites get torn apart by Albanians. Let's just call it right now. The Middle East and Eastern Europe, Northern Africa, Eastern Asia, it's just not a very travelable part of the world right now. I understand it's beautiful. I understand the beaches are, white. They're beautiful. And not just the people, but the sand is white. And honestly, the people are not that white. They're not very white. So, if you're a little bit more on the racist side, you're not going to be very happy. So, just in general, for you, regardless of if you're conservative, liberal, it doesn't matter. All these people will take your head off with a machete if they see you and they're like, oh, that person has money. They're a foreigner. They're an American. Cut your head off, throw you in a ditch, maybe steal your car. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. I had a wonderful time gathering these stories for you. I hope you had an even more wonderful time listening to them. I cannot wait for our Friday broadcast, our final one of the week. We finally made it. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to be there for it, subscribe. Ring the bell for notifications, like if you liked it, all that junk. In the meantime, I have been Ollie Vogt Larson with Your Brain on Air. Thank you so very much for listening. I'll catch you in tomorrow's upload, and bye-bye.